Good afternoon. It's Tuesday, June 14th. I'm Laura Cornfield, and this is IBA News, broadcasting from Jerusalem. In an unprecedented move, Israel's ambassador to the UN, Danone, has been elected chairman of the World Body's Legal Committee. This is the first time an Israeli has been appointed to the position since 1949, when the Jewish state joined the international body. His nomination is the result of a lengthy and diplomatic battle to prevent countries associated with the non-aligned movement and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation from blocking it. The Legal General Assembly panel, also known as the Sixth Committee, which Danone will head, deals with all of the UN's activities concerning international law and coordinates the fight against terrorism. Danone hailed the decision, saying he is proud to be the first Israeli to be elected to the post, adding Israel is a world leader in international law and fighting terrorism and will now have the opportunity to share its knowledge with the rest of the world. The Knesset Ethics Committee today decided to cancel the ban restricting lawmakers from visiting the Temple Mount. This after Knesset Speaker Yuli Edelstein was informed by police 2 weeks ago that they have no objections to Israeli lawmakers visiting the site. Prior to the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, Arab Knesset members told Edelstein they plan to go to the Temple Mount during this time, regardless of whether or not the ban is lifted. Since, Edelstein has been working on easing the restrictions. Last October, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu issued the directive barring all Knesset members and government ministers from visiting the site, fearing their presence may encourage violence. East Jerusalem terrorist Bilal Abu Ghaanim has been convicted of multiple murder and attempted murder charges for his role in last October's attack in the capital's Amona Nativ neighborhood, in which 3 Israelis were murdered and 10 others injured. The terrorist is also charged with aiding an enemy during times of war. The state prosecutor asked the court to sentence him to 3 consecutive life sentences and an additional 70 years for 7 convictions of attempted murder. Ghaanim, together with an accomplice, Baha Elian, concealed knives and a handgun in their pants and drove to Amona Nativ, where they boarded bus number 78 and perpetrated the attack. Elian was shot and killed by security forces, and Ghaanim was arrested. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today drew up direct parallel between terror attacks in Israel and the rest of the world. Speaking at the start of a luncheon with ambassadors from NATO countries, Netanyahu said that terror knows no boundaries and pledged to assist the North Atlantic Treaty Organization in defeating the Islamic State by sharing intelligence and counterterrorism know-how. Speaking ahead of Netanyahu, Danish ambassador to Israel Jesper Var, who acts as a local liaison with NATO, said the Western Defense Alliance and the Jewish state confront the same challenges. Var then read a message from NATO's Secretary General, who called Israel a significant partner in the organization. Last month, NATO invited Israel to open an official mission at its Brussels headquarters.
Today, our nations face greater, more complex threats than for many years. It is right that those countries that share common values of democracy, human rights, and the rule of law work together for the good of us all. Israel has for many years been an active member of NATO's Mediterranean Dialogue, the only security forum that brings together NATO allies with Israel and Arab countries. And last month, NATO and Israel went further, agreeing to establish an Israeli mission at NATO. Having a mission will help us to take our political and practical cooperation to a higher level. NATO and Israel are natural partners, and I, the Secretary General, very much hope and look forward to an even closer relationship in the years ahead.
I want to thank NATO for inviting Israel to open an office in your headquarters in Brussels. I called Secretary General Stoltenberg immediately to express my appreciation, and I want to inform you that we're in the process of opening the office as soon as possible. We attach great importance to that. Israel has much to contribute to NATO. I believe NATO has much to contribute to Israel. We've already begun that process, but I think we can extend and increase our cooperation. This meeting obviously comes at a difficult time. 2 days ago, a terrorist walked into a nightclub in Orlando and murdered nearly 50 innocent people, men and women. These people were doing nothing wrong. They were dancing with friends and enjoying music with loved ones. The terrorist murdered them because he was driven by intolerance to the LGBT community and driven by hatred for freedom and diversity. Now, days before that, a terrorist walked into a cafe in Tel Aviv and murdered 4 civilians. They too did nothing wrong. They were drinking coffee and enjoying the celebration of birthdays. Paris, Brussels, London, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Bali, Mumbai, New York, San Bernardino, now Orlando, and so many other cities have been struck by the same evil. Terror knows no bounds, and that is why our cooperation in the battle against terrorism must know no bounds as well.
The Army today conducted a large-scale exercise in the north, simulating the evacuation of some 14 communities located in close proximity to the border in times of war. The Upper Galilee Regional Council coordinated the drill with the Army. During the exercise, residents of Kibbutz Ma'ayan Baruch were instructed to remain in bomb shelters and were later evacuated by buses. A similar drill was conducted by the Army in areas surrounding the southern resort city of Eilat. Israel will never accept the original 2002 Arab Peace Initiative as a basis for negotiation with the Palestinians. That's the word from Prime Minister Netanyahu, who was speaking during a meeting with Likud ministers. The Prime Minister stressed that Israel will be willing to engage in talks with the Palestinians only once the Arab nations realize that the initial proposals needs to be revised in accordance with Israel's demands. The Prime Minister reiterated that if the 2002 initiative is not revised, Israel will choose to disregard it. He added that the positive side of the Arab proposal is that it shows the Arab nations are willing to achieve peace and normalize ties with Israel. However, the negative side of the proposal is the demand that Israel return to 1967 borders in the West Bank with certain adjustments, as well as leave the Golan Heights and the return of Palestinian refugees. IBA's Kalev Ben David discussed the pros and cons of the Arab Peace Initiative with Middle East expert Dr. Mordechai Kedar, who explained Netanyahu's so-called change in attitude to the new plan. The interview was recorded just hours prior to last week's deadly terror attack at the Sarona market.
We think that Netanyahu is afraid of an American unilateral recognition in a Palestinian state towards the end of the term of this administration. And he tries his best in order to show some kind of a process which will be without an American unilateral recognition in a Palestinian state. I think that he is afraid of it, and he might have his good reasons why to be afraid of it, and he will do anything in order to convince the American administration that there's no need to such a recognition, because we anyway go forward towards peace, although slowly, yet we do it.
Now, there are obviously aspects of the Saudi plan unacceptable to Israel, a complete return to the 1967 borders, for example. How much flexibility could there be on the Saudi or Arab side to altering this proposal more in terms Israel would like?
Well, since 2002, when this plan was presented to the Arab League by Saudi Arabia, which was later adopted by the Arab League, they claim, the Arabs claim, that Israel should accept it the way it is, as it is. No change, not even one comma. I myself had a debate with the one who formulated it, a Saudi politician, and he said, no, Israel should accept it the way it is without any change, because we thought about it. This is very balanced, according to his approach. So I asked him, it was on air in one of the Arab channels, well, is this something like the Quran, which could be changed? And are you infallible? Okay, let's negotiate. You want something, we might have another thing. Would you agree to something imposed on you by another party? But he didn't answer. But they think that this is the only thing which can be. And unfortunately, they think that, look...
Do you see any flexibility, any potential flexibility?
So far, we didn't see any flexibility. when it comes to this. Israel should return to the borders of the 1948, which were until 67, which Abba Ibn those days described as the borders of Auschwitz. The Arabs insist also on the right of return, and they say that the right of return should be agreed upon. Means Israel gets some kind of veto on the right of return, yet the Palestinians also have the right of veto on this thing. So I think that it leads really to nowhere.
Okay,
because
now
every side will interpret it according to its own.
In 2002, this when the Saudis introduced this plan, it was a very different Arab world than it is today. I mean,
No, they did
Syria.
it then. It was very clear. They did it in order to have their name better after the September 11, 2001 attacks on the United States. And the Saudis looked immediately to something which will make their name better in the United States of America. This is the whole thing about the Saudi, which later became the Arab Initiative.
But there are some who say the change in circumstances in the region, the potential joint front between the so-called moderate Sunni Arab states and Israel against Iran, make it a more plausible approach to peace.
Well, the question is, it is right, but the question is if we can count on it forever. Because, as you know, the Middle East is full of sand dunes, and the sand dunes move according to the wind. I give you a good example. Once we had a representation, official representation in Qatar. Qatar recognized Israel to a degree, and we had there a very low but official representation in Qatar. Then the second Intifada erupted towards the end of 2000, and Qatar kicked out all this representation, and everything which Israel achieved and paid for this got, in the air. So we cannot count on agreements and pay for agreements and words by land and interests like establishing the Palestinian state, which very possibly can turn into a Hamas state.
Without citing a specific reason, Nabil alArabi, Secretary General of the Arab League, canceled his first official visit to Ramallah that was set to take place today. A statement from his office said he would reschedule the trip at a later date. Unconfirmed reports quoted Palestinian officials saying alArabi canceled the trip because Israel refused to let him fly directly by helicopter from Amman in Jordan to Ramallah. The Arab League Secretary General was slated to discuss the French and Arab peace initiatives with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas during his scheduled visit. Some 30 leading Israeli defense companies are displaying their wares at this week's Eurosatory 2016 in Paris, the largest international exhibition focusing on land, defense, and security technologies. In light of recent terror attacks in the US and Europe, Israeli companies have been attracting much attention at the show. Some of the Israeli systems on display include a naval version of the Iron Dome missile system, advanced robot and unmanned vehicles that can open fire, systems to identify and neutralize drones, as well as systems for gathering intelligence and lethal weaponry for special interventions forces.
So we're totally protected, and I get 360 degrees vision.
French President François Hollande convened an emergency meeting with his country's top security echelon this morning, hours after a terrorist stabbed to death a 42-year-old police commander and his partner inside their home northwest of Paris. The terrorist was identified as Laroussi Abala'a, 25-year-old French national, who was affiliated with the Islamic State. He broadcast the entire attack live on his Facebook page, where he also called for the killing of security forces, police personnel, politicians, and journalists. In his last post, Laroussi said he was fulfilling instructions by the Islamic State spokesperson, who urged members to carry out as many attacks during the month of Ramadan. The terrorist attacked the plainclothes police officer just as he arrived home last night. Laroussi then entered the house and held the officer's partner, who also works for the police, and their 3-year-old son hostage. Special counter-terror units negotiated with the terrorist, who had barricaded himself inside. They then stormed the house, and a number of explosions were heard. Security forces fatally shot the terrorist and discovered the police commander's female partner had been killed. The couple's 3-year-old son was safely evacuated. Turning to the United States, where both Republican and Democratic presidential candidates called for tighter control and intelligence measures on Islamic State, in the wake of the deadly Orlando shooting. In his strongest reaction to the nightclub massacre, Trump said that if elected, he would suspend immigration from countries where there was a proven history of terrorism.
I called for a ban after San Bernardino and was met with great scorn and anger. But now, many years, and I have to say, many years, but many are saying that I was right to do so. And although the pause is temporary, we must find out what is going on. We have to do it. It will be lifted, this ban, when and as a nation we're in a position to properly and perfectly screen these people coming into our country. They're pouring in, and we don't know what we're doing. If we want to protect the quality of life for all Americans, women and children, gay and straight, Jews and Christians, and all people, then we need to tell the truth about radical Islam, and we need to do it now.
We also have to use all our capabilities to counter jihadist propaganda online. This is something I spent a lot of time on at the State Department. As president, I will work with our great tech companies from Silicon Valley to Boston to step up our game. We have to do a better job intercepting ISIS's communications, tracking and analyzing social media posts, and mapping jihadist networks, as well as promoting credible voices who can provide alternatives to radicalization.
An Israeli startup has developed a personality prediction program called Faceception, which it says can assist police and security services in identifying potential threats. The software can scan hundreds of faces in seconds and predict possible trouble in crowded areas. While the company's founders reject claims that the system can be perceived as racial profiling, security experts raise doubts regarding its effectiveness. They claim the ability to predict suspected illegal activities could harm the individual's freedom and emphasize the system must be absolutely reliable in order for it to be effective.
What we do, we know with high level of accuracy your personality ingredients, behavior, potential, and so we can have a profile about someone as individual, and the same we can do about the crowd. For example, telling that in, let's say, gate number 8, there is too much people that potentially can be terrorist or violent audience. So this is something that's very crucial for public safety.
The ability of this technology is to identify the threat in terms of potential without any previous information.
Certainly investment in technologies that enable to monitor an individual and actually to assess certain traits or certain attributes about the individual in the open space, open surveillance and monitoring capabilities, which kind of like put in risk private freedoms that we used to enjoy, like the freedom of privacy, like the freedom of communication that we used to enjoy. And now the technology certainly changes the balance.
Well, the challenge in airports and stadiums and places like that if you have a rate of false positive, meaning you choose people and identify them as whatever, terrorists or suspect, and you have a ratio of more than 1 to 10,000, you might have a problem in the flow of the airport.
Finance Minister Moshe Kahlon lashed out at Prime Minister Netanyahu's plan to open a casino in Eilat, saying the country needs to provide education, values, and jobs, not a casino. Kahlon made the statements at the Kulanu faction meeting in the Knesset this morning. Recently, Netanyahu appointed Minister of Tourism, Yariv Levin, to head a team tasked with examining the possibility of opening a casino in the southern resort city. Kahlon told party members that his ministry has already taken steps against existing gambling ventures, such as Mifal HaPais's slot machines that are scattered across the country. He noted the machines are often placed in poor neighborhoods where people are already financially strapped and don't have extra money to spend on fake illusions. Get those bookmarks ready. The 55th Annual Hebrew Book Week opens tomorrow, with fairs being held at nearly 50 locations across the country. Over 100 publishers are taking part this year, offering significant discounts on new releases, bestsellers, and beloved classics. On the sidelines of the sales, there will be a variety of literary events for the entire family, including get-togethers with authors, lectures, group readings, and even arts and crafts. Major events will be held at Tel Aviv's Rabin Square and the First Station in Jerusalem. For other cities, you can check your local listings. The 10-day event will run until the 25th of June. In local money matters, shares were down in late afternoon trading on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, while the shekel strengthened in foreign currency trading. Here are the numbers. Turning to the weather, it's hot and it's going to get hotter as the current heat wave is expected to last for the next 2 days until Thursday, when temperatures will drop slightly. In the meantime, hundreds took to the country's beaches in an attempt to get a little relief from the scorching temperatures. Anyone joining them now does so at their own risk, as lifeguards who are demanding better working conditions